The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's the 24th of February, 2025. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by our recruiting wonder kids, Izubee Charles and Stephen Wagner, who have been on the road again all weekend as we discuss the news of the day. And man, we're a week from spring practice. We've got a basketball coaching search that's starting to make some serious news. But for the CaneSport team this weekend, it was all about recruiting and getting out on the road and seeing kids and seeing coaches and just getting an assessment of how Miami's doing in its recruiting efforts. As you can see, Steven's a little worn out this morning, very, very tired. But he was in Orlando at the Under Armour Orlando. Izubee was in Atlanta at the remind me the name. What the name of that? The Sevens. They call it the Sevens tournament or the Sevens Classic in Atlanta. And Izubee spent his weekend up there. And you know, before we get into some of the specifics about players, you know, I got to tell you guys, you know, that when you take the Florida kid and send them even as far north as Georgia, he sticks out sometimes like a sore thumb. And Izubee hadn't been in the Atlanta area for more than maybe 20 minutes, and I was already getting pounded with texts. What's wrong with this guy Izubee that's on your staff? And I'll show you guys a little bit of what we're talking about. I mean, it's a nice day in Atlanta, brisk. You know, it's not like it was getting ready to snow or anything, and Izubee shows up for the 7-on-7, all bundled up, you know, like he's going to the Arctic. And you know, so people were like, wow, man, Izubee came all the way up here and he's freezing to death. And you could see here it is the next morning. He still has the sweatshirt on with the extra jacket. So he's a little frostbit this morning, it looks like. But Izubee, I'll start with you. Atlanta, the Sevens Classic, not too many people know what that is. But it was a 7-on-7 tournament with a lot of the better teams in the country. And that meant the South Florida teams from the 305, the 954. That meant Miami quarterback commitment Darion Coleman, who has been a terror on the 7-on-7 circuit so far this year. Give us your synopsis of what you saw up there in Atlanta.
Yeah, first off, absolutely freezing. I don't think I'll ever be back in Atlanta during this time of the year. You said it wasn't cold. It was 40. It was windy, and I could not feel my toes, fingers, or any extremity. So won't be back in anytime soon. But there was a ton of, like you mentioned, you know, South Florida guys, Miami commits. Actually, 4 Miami commits were at this tournament. All 3 of the 2026 commits, and then Amari Stevens in that 2027 class. And you know, like we've been saying, you know, from the beginning of the 7-on-7 year, Darion Coleman is absolutely torching every secondary he plays. And you know, walking up and down the sidelines, you hear these people from Georgia saying, "Oh, you know, who's this kid for DEF CON playing quarterback? You know, this kid looks amazing," and this and that. And then by the end of the day or weekend, everyone's like, "Wow, that's the Miami commit. That's Darion Coleman." He absolutely puts on a show wherever he goes, and you know, it's really getting hard to keep him ranked so low when he's going to, you know, all these big 7-on-7 tournaments, and he's the best quarterback at every single one. And this tournament, it's very unknown, but they're giving out grand prize of $20,000. So the best of the best, you know, made their way up there. South Florida Express, DEF CON, you know, Fast Houston, Trillion Boys from Miami, like all the best 7-on-7 tournament teams from Florida to California, all there. And it was hard to not say Darion Coleman wasn't the best player, if not the best quarterback there. So a ton of talent there. Got a chance to speak with, you know, Camden Portis, Jordan Campbell, Amari Stevens, you know, the 2027 commit, and they're all, you know, really excited about, you know, being committed to the Canes, and we're excited to, you know, be playing against each other, you know, interacting, all that good stuff. So a ton of talent, and a ton of talent that Miami's still recruiting. We're at that tournament as well. So got a big scoop on a few guys, and you know, we'll have, you know, those stories trickling out throughout the weeks, but a lot of talent up there in Georgia for the 7th tournament for sure.
So $20,000 winner take all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a first that I've ever seen. So DEF CON actually had to leave the tournament early to catch their flights. So they actually split the money down half, $10,000 to DEF CON and then $10,000 to a team called Coastline Stars. It was like the craziest thing. They beat C1N, which is Cam Newton's team, and then you see them all running. And then I'm like, what's going on? They have a championship place. Like, we have to catch our flight. We're going to miss our flight with 40 people. And I don't think you want to do that. But those guys, Darren Coleman led them to the championships. I think they would have won it. That's not me being biased, but you walk out with $10,000. I don't think anybody's mad with that.
So 10 grand, 40 people. Who gets the money?
That's a great question. That's $1 million answer right there.
Buy the next plane ticket to the next tournament. I mean, what do they do? What do they do with the cash?
Hey, I'm not sure, but it is very expensive flying out all these kids, housing them. So maybe that money's going to something good. But yeah, we'll split 10,000 even for those two teams.
You mentioned a few names, and there were a whole bunch of guys up there, 10, 15 guys at least, that are have official visit plans to Miami here this summer. What's the general reception that you're getting from recruits out there about the Miami Hurricanes right now? What's the vibe?
It's awesome. Honestly, going out there, you're in Georgia, you expect to see a lot of Bulldogs and, SEC things. And then you see, 4 or 5 kids, wearing, Miami gloves, have a Miami sleeve on, which I thought was really, really cool. One of the guys from New York, Messiah Hampton, one of Miami's top targets in that 2026 slide, he came in with a Miami book bag, decked with Miami, arm sleeves, gloves. There was another guy from Georgia, Cottrell Webb, 4-star guy who was, throwing up the U. And then just, even the Miami commits, guys like Camden Portis recruiting his SFE teammates. They have, huge official visit weekend on May 30th. I believe 5 or 6 guys from SFE are going to be there. He's recruiting those guys. And then just throughout the tournament, you're just, talking to guys saying, hey, what do you thought to Miami? And things like that. And they're saying they love the hires. Will Harris is one guy that his name was brought up a few times, specifically with Jalen Waters, who's a former Florida commit, on, how big of an impact he's had on his recruitment and him going to Miami, how big of an impact that had on things. And then even Zach Etheridge, he has a really, really good connection with, some of these top Georgia guys. And a few guys that said, hey, why is Miami on your list? Nazir McCoy's one. Miami really wasn't a big school, on his, radar. And then Zach Etheridge gets in the mix. He's, building that relationship. He has an official visit set with Miami. So a lot of defensive guys are, loving this new staff, their hires. And you talk to the wide receivers, they're raving about, Coach Kevin Beard. And, a few guys I'll mention, Samari Wingo said Shannon Dawson is a big reason why he loves Miami, having that number 1 offense in the country, having, multiple wide receivers over 500 yards. So a lot of these kids were in Georgia, but Miami was on their mind this weekend for sure.
You mentioned a couple of those coaches, Will Harris, one of them, Kevin Beard, the other. Last week there were some different rumors flying around about both those coaches. I can report for everybody that as of today, Monday morning, that we feel that both of those guys will be on the field next Monday when spring practice begins. Do not expect the Canes to lose either one of them at this point. But this is hiring season for the NFL. And in the case of Will Harris, he is well known in the league. And there was some concern there that the New Orleans Saints might show interest in him. But that has not materialized to this point. He has been working extremely hard with the defensive back group and in the team workouts. And, right now we are expecting Will Harris to continue to be on the employ of the Miami Hurricanes and be working with those DBs that I am hearing are doing very, very well out there in the team workouts, getting ready for spring practice. Going to be real excited to see what they look like in those spring drills that start next week. And of course, we'll have tons of coverage on that as it gets here. All right, Stephen, you look like you have Izubee sympathy pains or something this morning. You got the double sweatshirts going there. You got the hoodie, pretty close to wrapped around your neck. You got the thermostat over your left shoulder. So I don't quite understand the state of your heavy dress here this morning when you can control the temperature in your apartment with that thermostat.
It's like getting under warm covers whenever like you go to bed at night and it's cold in your bedroom. It's a snuggly feeling. It's cozy. I wanted to get a Snuggie, but I didn't have room in my last paycheck.
Snuggie. All right. We'll see if we can work on that as the days go by. All right. So you took the ride up the turnpike. You're at Under Armour, Orlando. Probably not quite as star-studded as what Izubee was witnessing up there in Atlanta. But give us just a synopsis of what you saw up there in the land of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, the irony of it is, well, actually, it's the land of Harry Potter, Gary. I'm not sure if you're with the times or not, but the wizarding world of Harry Potter is where all the kids hang out these days. The irony of it was A lot of the stars that we were thinking we might see in Orlando, we didn't see in Orlando because they were where Izubee was in Atlanta. So between myself in Orlando and Izubee in Atlanta, I mean, man, I really don't think there was, a top recruit, in this southeastern region of the country that Miami is involved with that we haven't been all over these last 2 days. Or I should say at least at skill positions. Obviously, there's some there are definitely some linemen who, wouldn't have had any need to go to Orlando or to Atlanta, but some of the top guys that we had a chance to see out in Orlando. And this kind of ties back into what you were saying about Will Harris. Chauncey Kennan, arguably the top corner on Miami's board, is way up there. I think a lot of people would agree that he's kind of the top corner in the state. His stock has just been rising and rising and rising and rising over really the last 2 years. He's from the Tampa area, really likes the idea of potentially staying in state. Miami's obviously right down the road. And whenever Will Harris made the move from Florida to Miami, that did significantly affect how Chauncey views the Hurricanes. Miami absolutely got a very real boost whenever they added Will Harris to that staff, because him and Will were pretty tight whenever Will was the secondary coach at Florida. And now that relationship is just carrying over, pretty seamlessly to Miami. And Miami's a team that I already thought was doing pretty well for Chauncey. I think Harris has only helped Miami's case. Georgia, Florida State, LSU, Florida, those 4 schools are also doing pretty well for him. Right now, I do think it's kind of a tight race. I know Georgia and Florida State have been 2 of these schools that have, that we've heard their name thrown around a little bit. Of course, Georgia, you can never count out Georgia with Kirby Smart, especially since, right now he's probably succeeded Nick Saban as the best current head coach in college football, with obviously things humming at Georgia. LSU, obviously, they have a ton of resources and have had success recruiting the secondary and recruiting Florida in the last couple of years. You think of their ability to pull DJ Pickett out of the state last year, but I think that Miami is going to have an awesome chance here. I really do believe that Miami's going to have a really good chance. That was probably the guy that I kind of walked away with the biggest takeaway on, is that Miami is in a very good position, in my opinion, for what I think is, or for a player who I think is probably the top cornerback in the state, and definitely one of the best players in the state of Florida.
All right, another guy that I know you saw up there was offensive guard from the Tampa area, Deron Parks, and he's a guy, a lot of effort at Miami goes into recruiting those bigs on the offensive line. It's obviously Mario Cristobal's pet position, and Deron Parks is looking like he's very much in the mix there with the coaches.
Yeah, Deron, he's right now, I think his measurables are 6'4", 305, something like that. I saw him in person yesterday. I think he's more like 6'4.5" and 320. This kid is just absolutely freaking massive, and a guy that Miami really likes a lot. Mario Cristobal is recruiting him incredibly heavily. Mario Cristobal is leading this charge personally, head on. Alex Mirabal is doing a really good job recruiting him too. They've developed a very tight relationship with him, but the first thing that I noticed about him yesterday is whenever he was walking out of the camp, he had an Ohio State backpack on. The Buckeyes have been doing a pretty good job with him for a while too. I know that there's definitely some very real interest there. Right now, he has official visits locked in with Auburn and Penn State. But I asked him, how Miami kind of compares to some of these other schools, and he said Miami's in that top tier. They are a top tier program, absolutely, for him at the moment. Now, am I confident in saying I think, Miami will have an awesome chance, or I think he's going to end up at Miami, or anything like that? Definitely not. But he is very high on Miami. He really likes Mario Cristobal. He really likes Alex Mirabal. He's planning on getting back down sometime in the spring. He's planning on getting down an official visit. So you can just kind of take that for what you will, because I would say that there's kind of a little bit of room for cautious optimism with him.
All right, and I also wanted to ask you about a kid from IMGs, an edge rusher, Jay Cruel, obviously a guy that's getting a lot of attention around the country, including from Miami. What did you walk away from after talking to Jake?
Well, I walked away from talking to his dad, learning that his last name is Krell and not Cruel, and I've been pronouncing it wrong on every single podcast, every single show, every single episode that we've done over the last really, I guess, 7 months, 8 months or so since he got his Miami offer. So that was a little bit of a faux pas on my end, but Miami's doing very well for him too. He's playing his recruitment a little bit slower at the moment. He's really not in a rush. He's got a bunch of other schools after him at the moment. Florida's making a run. Oklahoma's making a run. Texas is going to make a run. Miami's making a pretty aggressive run too. He hasn't set any official visits yet, but he's going to be back at Miami the weekend of March 30th. If all goes well there, I'd be pretty surprised if Miami doesn't end up getting an official visit. And for Jake, I mean, it really does all come down to, well, I shouldn't say all of it, but a good deal of it really does come down to Jason Taylor. Taylor being able to, get Jason Taylor once again, being able to get into a room with one of these, top 100 elite pass rushers, just simply by saying, I'm Jason Taylor. I've been to the place you want to be. I am an NFL Hall of Famer. You want to be a Hall of Famer? I am a Hall of Famer. Come learn from me. I think that definitely resonates with a kid like Jake, who really likes the idea of player development and kind of having a good connection with the coaching staff. Now, who else is going to get an official visit? I can't really say for certain. It does feel like Texas could get one. Does feel like Florida could get one. Does feel like Oklahoma could get one. But he's a kid who's definitely taking things slow. He doesn't want to rush things along. I know that he has an older sister who plays soccer at Coastal Carolina. So the family has sort of been through this process before. They sort of know how it goes whenever your kid is being recruited to play college football. So they're handling this, I think in a very intelligent way. They are not rushing everything, or they're not rushing anything. And, Jake is pretty steadfast on the idea that he's going to go on these spring visits, and he's going to very carefully weigh his options after the spring visits and really see who impresses him, because right now it is still a pretty tight race.
All right, so you guys can read about all this stuff this morning on the website. We'll have continued stories and coverage over the next couple of days, off of these road trips to Orlando and Atlanta, and encourage you guys to check those out. And then big weekend next weekend, because the Under Armour Camp Series moves to South Florida. It's Under Armour Miami, and both Steven and Izubee will be out there bringing you tons of coverage on the goings-on at that camp. So it's a camp season in South Florida, and that's always an exciting time. And then, of course, we will have spring practice beginning and tons of recruits flowing through spring practice here over the next 6 weeks. And we'll have lots of coverage for you guys at CaneSport.com on all of that. So recruiting picking up in a big-time way for the 2026 recruiting class. All right, I'm going to shift gears here for a moment and talk about something else that picked up some steam this weekend, and that is the Miami basketball search. Basically, they've been for several weeks now checking out candidates around the country behind the scenes, talking to agents, trying to feel who might be interested in the job, who might not. I'm not going to sit here and say I think they have a complete list. If they were to wait a few weeks when the season ends, they might find they have a few more candidates than what they've had. But they feel pretty good about the work that they've done so far in the search. And we can debate it. but we won't because he hasn't been hired yet. But they seem to have settled on Hy Lucas, who's the assistant at Duke, the lead assistant at Duke, considered one of the top recruiters in the country. He's worked at Kentucky. He's worked at Duke. As the leading candidate in their search right now. And it leaked shortly after this decision was made. There were reports all over the internet that Lucas had been hired by Miami, which, creates a viral frenzy out there on a lot of different websites and stuff. And, obviously we were doing our due diligence and doing the reporting on after hearing the name Hy Lucas, and what we were told is that nobody has been offered the job yet. He is, without question, the focus candidate. As the name leaked, there was no denial that he was a focus candidate in the search and was emerging as the top guy on Miami's board. But they're just not at the point yet in the search or they were not, at least over the weekend, at the point in the search where they were ready to so-called offer the job. And the way this works is you don't offer somebody the job until you know they are going to take the job, until you have reached contract terms with their agent. Nobody's offering jobs and getting turned down. You hardly ever see that, not just in college sports, but in sports in general. Somebody's usually hired. The contract's already been agreed upon. You know what the terms are going to be, what the expectations are from both sides. There's an agreement in place, and it gets transacted. So the initial plan was that this was going to evolve over the next week or two. Lucas is the lead assistant at Duke. He runs their defense. They are in the national championship mix up there in Durham, and there was no great rush to get this thing consummated because there was the respectful consideration that he's a big part of Duke's coaching staff, and they have a very good team, and they're going to be going to the ACC tournament. They're going to be going to the NCAA tournament. Now, has that changed now that his name has become public? We don't know that either way yet for a fact. My suspicion is that what happened this weekend was a game changer in this search and in these conversations with Lucas and his agents. I can't imagine Duke, which, by the way, only happens to be coming to Miami on Tuesday night, wanting this distraction of an assistant coach, being rumored every 5 minutes to be leaving and going to Miami while they're trying to focus on winning these tournaments and getting to the national title game. So I'm guessing that Duke might tell Lucas, get this over with one way or the other. If you're going to go to Miami, we wish you the best. So it might expedite this whole process here. Really, I wouldn't be shocked if it reached a conclusion before that game Tuesday night, when everybody obviously is going to be talking at the Watsco Center about whether this Duke assistant is going to be the next Miami basketball coach. So we will continue to monitor that, see what happens. We do believe he is the leading candidate, but we've learned the hard way through the years that doesn't always mean anything. You got agents involved. They could be floating their guy to try to create a bidding war. There are several schools that are looking for a coach now that will be looking for a coach in the coming weeks. And Lucas is one of the more highly regarded assistant coaches that are out there right now because of the success he's had in recruiting, recruiting serious blue chip players that are getting extremely big NIL contracts. I'm not sure I would be overreacting to that the way some people are, but he is very highly regarded out there and is perceived to be a coach that a lot of schools might be interested in. Thus, why Miami might have been trying to get out ahead on this thing. There's a lot of reasons why it might have leaked. If it leaked from the Lucas camp, which some people have said it did, they might be trying to create a bidding war for their client. I mean, this is what agents do. This is their job. And getting his name out there in this regard, suggesting that he's going to Miami, would certainly do that. It would inspire other schools to possibly call and say, whoa, wait a minute, we're interested in Hy Lucas. And, let's talk for a minute. So that could be happening. Or Miami there might be some people in Miami that don't want to wait a few weeks for their basketball coach to come on board, that they're anxious. It's looking like the program, well, we already know the season is in a total mess, and the program is at rock bottom right now. And there is some anxiety to get it turned back around in the other direction. And, they may not want to wait a few weeks for the Duke basketball season to play itself out. By getting his name out there, it kind of forces the hand a little bit. So this can go in a lot of different directions. Not sure which one it will. We're just kind of trying to stay neutral on this and let it evolve. Like I said, we've done this many times through the years. Heck, we saw one situation where Rick Pitino literally was believed to have an agreement with Miami to become Miami's basketball coach. Leonard Hamilton leaked it to a reporter from the Miami Herald who put it out. And just like that, it went away. So this deal they thought they had with Rick Pitino went bye-bye strictly because of a leak. So not quite sure who leaked it, why it leaked. I don't see it as a positive for the whole process. If he comes to Miami and they really want him, then, there's nothing worse for the wear. If somebody else swoops in and gets into the sweepstakes for Lucas, obviously it's a negative. We'll see what happens from there, but it's going to be a very interesting next, let's say 48 hours with Duke coming to town on Tuesday, which might have originally been a great day for an interview with the game not until the evening. And Lucas is sitting somewhere near campus in a hotel with Duke, and maybe he might have come in the day before or whatever. I'm not really sure, but it figures to be an interesting time here with Miami basketball over the next 48 hours or so, and we are monitoring that the best we can. All right, so also, I'm sure you've noticed on the website, we've been doing a lot of things to try to get you guys prepared for spring practice, and we continue to do that today with several stories, one of which is the most pressing question on offense. And not surprisingly, we've settled on the wide receiver position where you've lost a lot of talent. Jacoby George, Xavier Restrepo, Sam Brown. Miami is in rebuild mode at wide receiver. Guys, I'm going to bring you into this conversation because you've recruited a lot of these you've covered a lot of these young recruits, and now we're going to get an opportunity to play. I'm hearing amazing things about Josh Moore. Izubee, you commented about him on the message boards this week. Josh Moore has been a man out there in team workouts, showing ability way beyond his years as a incoming freshman who really should still be in high school right now. JoJo Trader continues his emergence in terms of mojo on the team. Big things are expected from him this year. But it still is the biggest area of concern for Miami. Izubee, I'll kick it to you. Will Miami have enough at receiver when they go into spring practice, or will they be back in the portal afterwards looking for that alpha dude to complement what they already have on the roster?
So I do think they do right now. If the season started tomorrow, I do think Miami has enough, at wide receiver with, JoJo. I like that mojo JoJo. I might steal that if you use that now.
But make a T-shirt.
But with JoJo Trader, and then I can keep going back to this. I really do think CJ Daniels is going to be wide receiver one for Miami unless they go into the portal and get a guy that's far and beyond better than him. It's actually funny, obviously we know about the Carson Beck situation, what happened, and then a reporter tried to interview Carson at the Miami game, and you see CJ Daniels sitting next to him. So obviously those two guys are kind of building a bond off the field and things like that. But I do think CJ Daniels is very good. JoJo Trader, I think, is very good. And then, the young guys, Joshua Moore, who we've all been hearing great things about him in Miami. Obviously, they're not in pads or training, but when a guy comes in, 6'4", 220, a freshman like that's making, rounds like that's leading to, hey, this kid, might have something special, especially when people are down there calling him a freak and saying all these good things about him. And then you have guys like Malachi Toney, even, Chance Robinson, who we really didn't see last year, and Nikar, who's one of the top wide receivers in the 2024 class as well. So I do think there's a lot of talent. Obviously, it's a younger room with C.J. Daniels being the only senior, but I do think they have enough guys that are going to start to emerge, and guys that people may be sleeping on that I really do think are going to show out this spring and kind of start to say, hey, we're here. You don't need to keep going to the portal to bring guys. Just use the guys that you recruit to really establish this wide receiver room, which I think they'll do.
Yeah, and Steven, you've covered these guys as well. I'm looking for Nye Carr to make a move this spring too. I'm not hearing a ton of Nye Carr conversation. I'm hoping that he can jump up, but this is a big spring for these young kids that Miami's been recruiting in the last couple classes to just prove to the coaches that they're ready to be primetime players.
Yeah, from what I've heard at Miami, as far as like the receiver situation goes, it's not that, excuse me, it's not that Nye Carr, isn't progressing or that he doesn't look good. It's that, excuse me, it's that JoJo Trader and Joshua Moore have just kind of, made everyone go, oh, holy cow. Not to mention, in addition to that, they went out and they got CJ Daniels from the portal. They have all of this talent, they have all of this talent coming back for another year. They are getting to the point where you're starting to see their recruiting classes play out, or you're starting to see their recruiting classes actually be developed to the point that you look at their receiver room and it's overwhelmingly guys that this staff has recruited. It's not just a mixture of portal guys or, maybe a couple of dudes left over from Manny Diaz. I think that, right now it's just the fact that this receiver room finally looks like it has like some depth. That being said, I do think Malachi Toney is going to be a serious breakout candidate as a true freshman. I have heard nothing but, just awesome things about Malachi Toney. I've heard he looks, far beyond his years as a receiver. He navigates the field with just an awareness that's just different for a 17-year-old kid, because remember, he's not just graduating high school early as a member of the 2025 class. He reclassified an entire he reclassified an entire year early. He's supposed to be in the 26 cycle. He's supposed to be signing his NLI this December. When in fact he actually went ahead and reclassified and signed back in December 2024. I also think Dalen Upshaw. I've heard really good things about Dalen Upshaw. It wouldn't stun me if we see Dalen Upshaw at some point. The only reason why I kind of maybe want to hold the horses a little bit on Joshua Moore, even though there was a clip of Cody Belair, who's a member of the On3 scouting and ranking staff on Josh Newberg's show the other day, saying that he truly believes that Josh Moore is going to start for Miami this year. Kind of the hold your horses moment I had with him was, whenever I had the chance to see Josh last year, does he have awesome potential? Yes. Does he have what I think is the highest true ceiling of any receiver that Miami currently has on its roster? Yes, he absolutely does. But he didn't receive an insanely, ridiculously high level of coaching that you would at, say, an IMG Academy or a Bishop Gorman or a Modern Day, or one of these schools. I do still think that there's a little bit of work to be done. I do think he needs to continue refining his game, but I think what we have seen so far is that all of the signs that you want in a true athletic freak are absolutely there. He's showing every bit of the potential that I think he ultimately has, but I do think he's going to need a little bit of guidance to get there, and I think that that's something that Kevin Beard is going to be in a great position to do.
All right, and we're sitting here talking about talent and the level of talent on the roster, and College Football News put out a top 100 list of the top players returning in college football over the weekend, and it got sent to me, and I started looking at it. I'm like, man, there's no Miami players in here. There was one, Francis Manoa, and I'm like, I said to like, where's Carson Beck? Like, I get it. They don't know about Joshua Moore and a lot of these young kids that are going to be trying to emerge here in spring practice. I'm like, but Carson Beck, like, he's not one of the top 100 returning players in college football. They're paying many millions of dollars to have him here at Miami, but he's not, he's not one of the better players. So I contacted them. I said, hey, Carson Beck's not on your list. Is that on purpose? And I got a very pointed message back, that basically said, yeah, it's on purpose, and here's why. And they gave me this long support for their theory that Carson Beck's not one of the top 100 players returning in college football. So it was just too interesting to not write about. So I put a little story together on it. It's on the website today. I think you guys will enjoy that, and you can take a look at who the top 100 players in their eyes really are and kind of see how you think the Miami players compare to that. But the bottom line is the gauntlet has been thrown out, okay? And Miami players need to take notice that people out there do not think you are going to be very good this year. In fact, Ari and Andy, the two college football experts for On3, they put out their college football playoff projections over the last week or so. Neither one of them picks Miami to make the college football playoff this year. And if that doesn't happen, of course, Miami fans are going to be very upset. But like I said, the gauntlet's been thrown out to the Miami team. Like, hey, man, like, we're, a lot of people are saying that you guys are not really going to be very good this year. Shouldn't need that kind of motivation to get better during spring practice. But this is a very, 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 as Stephen Wagner would say, important spring for the Canes. No doubt about it. In terms of the roster development, they've put 3 back-to-back recruiting classes together that they really, really like. It is time for more of these guys to start emerging as primetime players, and we will continue to monitor how that goes. So we've got that story. We also have a continued look at the early enrollees that are coming in, and every day for a couple hours we stick Izubee into that lab that Matt Shodell loves so well because he's so productive in there. And we stick Izubee in that lab and say, be productive like Matt. And he churns out a couple looks at these early enrollees that are coming in. So you've been seeing them here over the past several days. You will continue to see them all this week as we continue to look at them. We also take a deep dive into the linebacker and defensive back positions and start getting you guys more familiar with what those positions look like going into spring practice. Lastly, I hope you guys have been enjoying our new series on the site. It's called Message Board Mania, and we came up with this idea because we love our message boards. We have a great community at CaneSport.com. A bunch of guys do a great job posting, and we decided we were going to start bringing to life these message board posts at CaneSport.com. And by the way, if you are not yet a member to CaneSport.com, please, 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 your subscriptions literally allow us to do what we do every single day to make you guys the most informed fans, the best fans in the country. And it's just really important that if you're not yet a subscriber to our site, that we get you on board to CaneSport.com as a subscriber. So head on over to the site. And there's always an introductory special there that you can take advantage of to kind of test drive the site, so to speak, and get yourself familiar with it. But anyway, part of the site is this great community on the message boards. And so we've been taking a look at some of the issues that the fans have been bringing up. Today, we take a look at the special teams, which has really taken on a big focus amongst the fan base in recent days. Miami fans seem to really want to see Mario Cristobal, shake things up a little bit with his special teams coaching and try to get the Miami special teams performing like they used to perform, as they say, back in the day when you had guys like Tremaine Mack blocking kicks and Miami coverage teams weren't giving up multiple returns for touchdowns like they did last season. And it is without question an area of focus as Miami goes into the spring, summer, and fall. We may yet see Mario Cristobal do some coaching things, but we take a little bit of a look at that through the eyes of the message boards. So make sure you check out our Message Board Mania feature today as well. So that's going to do it for today's Good Morning CaneSport. We're going to let Stephen and Izubee go, find a sauna or steam room or whatever, where they can kind of get the blood flowing through their body again and get warmed up. And Izubee, you'll be traveling back to South Florida today. We're getting you out of the cold, back to the warm. So that's a good thing. And we encourage all you guys out there to just stay tuned to CaneSport.com for the developing stories on the basketball search and all this recruiting stuff that's going on. We will keep you on the pulse without question all week long. So for Izubee Charles and Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you so much for starting out your day with us this morning, and we will see you next time, everybody.